Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with the What a Deck profile for the Pendulum Magician Dimension Dragon Toolbox deck, as brought to you by Patreon sponsor Kieran Lowdon. I'm just going to go through everything in here and then I'll explain how it works. So for monsters, we're playing 3 Dragon Pit Magician, 3 Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon, 3 Astrograph Sorcerer, 1 Skullcrabat Joker, 3 Black Fang Magician, 3 White Wing Magician, 2 Wisdom Eye Magician, 2 Iris Magician, 3 Violet Poison Magician, and 2 Timebreaker Magician. For spells, we're playing 3 Duelist Alliance, 2 Amazing Pendulum, 3 Odd-Eyes Fusion, 1 Pendulum Call, 2 Pendulum Storm, and 2 Pendulum of Ages. For traps, just 2 Pendulum of Space-Time. The extra deck consists of 1 Supreme King Zark, 1 Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, Odd-Eyes Vortex Dragon, Star Eater, Ignister, Stardust Spark Dragon, Odd-Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, Wing Synchro Dragon, Odd-Eyes Rebellion Dragon, Odd-Eyes Absolute Dragon, Red-Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon, Startime Magician, and Castel, the Skyblaster Musketeer. The side deck I will go over in a moment. So this deck is actually kind of a challenge to me. It's a Patreon request, as I had mentioned, and the patron wanted me to make a deck that could make all of the Dimension Dragons from Arc V, which if you're unfamiliar is Starving Venom, Wing, Dark Rebellion, and Odd-Eyes Dragon. So this deck is just a toolbox. It's probably not the most consistent Pendulum deck, but it's designed to be able to get those 4 out, and I guess to a lesser degree Zark, which you can use with all 4 of those. So with that in mind, and as I said before, this deck is a toolbox deck, which means its win condition is to basically counter your opponent. You have a wide array of tools in your extra deck, and the various things to summon it. So I'm just going to start at the top and work our way down. To start with, we have obviously our pendulums. Every monster in the main deck is a pendulum. Most of them are 8 scale or 1 scale. I think we have a 2 scale, but either way, because all your monsters are level 7 or level 4, you're going to be able to pendulum summon anytime you get a high scale and a low scale. The only things that really break up this are Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon, which if you place it in your pendulum zone, during the end phase, you can destroy it, and then add any pendulum monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand. Not ideal, but if you need to search and you start with more than one of them, it can at least get you sort of started, set up for next turn. Likewise, Wisdom Eye Magician, a little bit faster. This is if you have a Magician or Performapal card in your other Pendulum Zone, which most of our cards are Magicians. You can destroy this card and place another Magician in your Pendulum Zone, except for this. So we're very rarely, if ever, using this actually in the Pendulum Zone. Normally, we're just destroying it to add something else that we need. Now, working with that engine, we have Pendulum of Ages. This is your opponent cannot target spellcaster-type monsters you control with spell effects, which is mildly useful, though there's not a lot of spells that target these days. More importantly, if a face-up Magician Pendulum monster card, either in your Monster Zone or your Pendulum Zone, leaves the field, you can add 1 Pendulum Magician monster from your deck to your hand. So basically, anytime one of your Pendulum Magicians would leave the field for pretty much any reason, you're going to be able to search another Pendulum, which is great, because a lot of these actually have effects that activate either when they're destroyed, or they can destroy themselves to activate their effects. Of course, Wisdom Eye, like I mentioned, can destroy itself in order to search out another one. Iris Magician, if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add a Pendulum from your deck to your hand, which includes Ages if you don't already have it, as well as Space-Time, which I'll get to in a moment. White Wing Magician, while it's in the Pendulum Zone, it's 1 per turn. You can negate the activation of a card that would target a dark spellcaster-type monster you control, and then destroy this card. Black Fang Magician, destroy this to target a face-up monster your opponent controls, and its attack becomes half of its current attack. And also, if it's destroyed by battle or card effects, you can target 1 dark spellcaster monster in your graveyard and special summon it, which most of the time these are going to be in your extra deck, although if you use them for an Ixie summon, then they'll be in the graveyard, you can get them back. Violet Poison Magician, probably one of the best one. It's if a dark spellcaster type monster you control battles before damage calculation, you can make that monster gain 1200 attack and destroy this card. Also, if this card is destroyed, you can destroy 1 face-up card on the field. Finally, Timebreaker Magician, if this is in the monster card zone, you can target a monster your opponent controls, banish both it and this card until your next standby phase. So pretty good spot removal in general. You can clear the field if they have a face-down card with this in order to attack directly, or if they have something like Beals that can't be destroyed, you could just banish it off the field for a turn. More importantly, you can actually use this to bait out quite a few things. If they have a Wing Synchro Dragon, you can use this, and they'll have to get rid of it, otherwise their Crystal Wing's going to be gone. And whether it leaves the field because of its own effect, or whether it gets negated, either way it's going to activate Pendulum. Pretty much all the things I just mentioned activate Pendulum. Your other Pendulum Magician, Space-Time, helps with this as well, as in addition to making it so that your Spellcaster-type monsters can't be targeted with trap effects. Once per turn during either player's turn, you could target a Magician Pendulum card in your Monster Zone or your Pendulum Zone, and one card your opponent controls, and destroy both of them. So this is great for removing pretty much everything, and of course with some of your monsters, like especially Violet Poison Magician, you get even more synergy, because when this is destroyed, you get to destroy another card. So you're destroying 2 cards at once. This also has the nifty effect that if both cards that you targeted weren't destroyed by this effect, you can then send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. So if your opponent thinks they're cheeky, if they try to destroy your target before it can be destroyed with Pendulum Magician, or even if you want to, you can target something like Beals that can't be destroyed, and since it won't be destroyed, you can then just send it to the graveyard. Now both of these can be searched with Duelist Alliance. This is if there's a card in your Pendulum Zone, add 1 Pendulum monster, or a Pendulum spell trap from your deck to your hand. You can only use it once per turn, but this will search out both of these, which is why we only play them at 2. This can also search out your Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon, as well as Amazing Pendulum and Pendulum Storm, which we also play at 2. Oh, and Pendulum Call. Pendulum Call, if you don't know, you can discard 1 card to add 2 Magician Pendulum monsters with different name from your deck to your hand. Great search power, although cards in your Pendulum Zone cannot be destroyed by card effects until the end of your opponent's next turn, which normally would help you out, but in this case it actually works kind of against you because you want to destroy the cards in your Pendulum Zone a lot of times. But in a pinch it can still be pretty good for setting things up. Pendulum Storm will destroy as many cards in both players' Pendulum Zones as possible, and then destroy 1 spell trap card your opponent controls. So this is our spell trap removal. It's particularly good in this deck because it lets you proc all your effects that when they're destroyed, lets you activate Pendulum Magician in order to search something out while destroying something in your opponent's spell trap zone. And again, with Violet Poison in particular, you could pop a face-up card in addition to the spell trap you're already going to be destroying. Amazing Pendulum, meanwhile, this is just if you control no cards in your Pendulum Zones, add 2 face-up Magician Pendulums with different names from your extra deck to your hand. This can just be a great recovery card. If you blow up your scales and then try to reset them and then your opponent Twin Twisters them, you can just add them back. You could probably play it at 1 if you want to, since it's searchable by things, but I find that 2 works pretty well. Now there's a couple other monsters I want to mention real quick. Of course, we got our 1 Performapal Skullcrobat Joker. When this is normal summoned, you can add any Magician Pendulum or any Odd-Eyes monster from your deck to your hand. So it searches pretty much everything except for this Astrograph Sorcerer. Plus it's a level 4 Dark Spellcaster, so it works with everything else. Astrograph Sorcerer is pretty nice. If it's in your hand and cards you control are destroyed, you can special summon this from your hand. It's got a pretty beefy 2500 attack. In addition to that, if the card destroyed was a monster, you can add another copy of that monster from your deck to your hand. Particularly good, again, if you have like a Violet on your field or one of these on your field. Probably most importantly, if this card is on the field, you can banish it and 1 YGOPro Dragon, Pendulum Dragon, Synchro Dragon, and Fusion Dragon from your hand, field, or graveyard to summon Supreme King Zark. This card, if you're unfamiliar with it, has 4,000 attack, 4,000 defense, can only be fusion summoned. When it's special summoned, destroy all cards your opponent controls. It cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Your opponent cannot target the cards with this effect. And when it destroys a monster by battle, you can special summon 1 Supreme King Dragon monster from your deck or extra deck. Also, if this card in the monster card zone is destroyed somehow, you can place it in your Pendulum Zone. And once there, it makes it so that your opponent's Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters cannot activate their effects, and also once per turn if your opponent activates cards from their deck to their hand, you can destroy those cards. So this thing is nigh unstoppable, very powerful to summon out, a little bit difficult, but actually not as difficult as you would think. The monsters that it listed there, of course you can use the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon because it has Fusion Dragon in the name, but your Magicians actually all count as a type of dragon. So Violet Poison Magician counts as a Fusion Dragon, Black Fang counts as an Xyz, this counts as a Synchro Dragon. So if you can get one of each type into the graveyard and this on the field, you can then banish them all from your graveyard to summon Zark. The rest of your extra deck I'll just go over briefly. We've got Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon. This is an Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon plus a Spellcaster type monster, which we have the Odd-Eyes Pendulum, and then everything else in the deck is a Spellcaster. If it's fusion summoned using Pendulum summoned monsters on the field, it's unaffected by your opponent's card effects that turn. And depending on what level of spellcaster you used, it can either make 2 or 3 attacks each battle phase. So it can be pretty good. It can OTK against smaller decks, and just making it unaffected is pretty nice. You summon these, by the way, with Odd-Eyes Fusion. I guess I forgot to mention this. This only lets you fusion summon dragon-type monsters, but other than that, it works kind of like polymerization. You can use your hand or your side of the field as material. Additionally, if your opponent controls 2 or more monsters and you control no monsters, you can use up to 2 Odd-Eyes monsters in your extra deck as the fusion material. This means, of course, that if you've already got an Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon and like an Astrograph Sorcerer that have been sent to your extra deck, you can use it to make Rune Eyes. Probably more importantly, you can make Odd-Eyes Vortex Dragon at just about any time, as long as your opponent has 2 monsters and you don't have any. This is 1 Odd-Eyes monster and 1 Pendulum monster, and we're playing several Odd-Eyes in the deck, as well as a Pendulum monster in the deck. So if you control no monsters, you could just set Odd-Eyes Rebellion Dragon, and then like a Meteor Burst Dragon to summon this thing out. And this thing's pretty good. When it's summoned, you could target 1 attack position monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. And during either player's turn, when a spell trap or monster effect is activated, you could shuffle 1 face-up Pendulum monster from your extra deck into the deck and negate the activation. Finally, rounding out the synchros, we've just got Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. You can fusion this with 2 dark monsters, but they have to be on the field, which again is not that difficult if you pendulum summon 2 of your magician pendulums on the field, Astrograph Sorcerer, Odd-Eyes itself. These are all dark monsters, so it's pretty easy to get this out. Of course, it can gain attack equal to 1 special summoned monster on the field. Once per turn, you can steal the monster effect of a level 5 or higher monster, and if it's destroyed, destroy all special summoned monsters your opponent controls. Pretty nice, although only in certain niche situations. As for our Synchro cards, we've got 1 level 11 in Star Eater that's mostly just there to be a big beat stick, and then a couple level 8s and 1 level 7. You're mostly making these with White Wing Magician. This is the only tuner in the deck. Its only effect on the field is that if it's pendulum summoned and used as synchro material, you have to banish it. So normally what you want to do is like pendulum summon other things, then normal summon this, and use it for a synchro. That way you can pendulum summon it back next turn. Because almost everything here is level 4, that's why we've got so many 8s, including Ignister Prominence that can be made with a tuner and a non-tuner pendulum. Stardust Spark Dragon to protect your things, and just another Odd-Eyes card because we needed one. Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, of course, just to fit the theme, which you can make using your Timebreaker Magician since it's level 3. And then the Star Eater you can make with your level 7s like Dragon Pit, Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon, and Astrograph Sorcerer. Ixies, we have rank 7s and rank 4s. We only have a couple rank 4s just because there's not much room. Castell is just a staple card. You can send things back. Dark Rebellion because I needed it in the deck in order to fit the theme, and then Startime Magician, probably the best rank 4. You can only make this with Magician Pendulum monsters, which of course we have a lot of. Its effect, once per turn, you can detach 1 Ixie material from this card to add 1 Dark Spellcaster type Pendulum monster, either face up in your extra deck, in your graveyard, or in your deck to your hand. So it searches out just about everything in the deck except for White Wing Magician and Dragon Pit and Wisdom Eye, but any of your other magicians as well as Astrograph Sorcerer, which is pretty nice. In addition, it has this effect that during either player's turn, if a pendulum monster in your monster zone or pendulum zone would be destroyed, you could send 1 spellcaster type monster from your deck to your graveyard instead. This is actually amazingly good because it allows you to use things like Violet Poison Magician without actually destroying it. You can just give this 1200 attack, and instead of having your scales be destroyed, you can send one of these to the graveyard, so it sets up for being able to summon Zark. If you wanted to do Zark Turbo, you could probably do it turn 2, maybe even turn 1 if you had 2 of these in here, and just focused on nothing but the rank 4s, maybe take out the Odd-Eyes and the Dragon Pit Magician. The rank 7 cards, meanwhile, just here for all your level 7 monsters that you have. I went with Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon because it can't be destroyed by card effects. Odd-Eyes Absolute Dragon is actually pretty good. This is when either player's monster declares an attack, you can detach 1 material to negate the attack, and then special summon an Odd-Eyes from your hand or graveyard. This is pretty good because most of the time you're going to be using an Odd-Eyes to make it, and you can actually detach that Odd-Eyes to negate an attack from your own monster, and then summon it back on the field, so you have even more attacks to do. In addition, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can summon an Odd-Eyes monster from your extra deck other than itself, which is pretty good because it allows you to get things like Odd-Eyes Rebellion Dragon, which normally takes 2 dragon-type monsters, and its effect is kind of meh. It's only really there because it has 3000 attack, it's a big beat stick, and of course if it's destroyed, you can destroy both the cards in your pendulum zones, and add this to your pendulum zone, which will help you activate some of your effects. And its pendulum effect is if you have no cards in your other pendulum zone, you can just add any pendulum monster from your deck to that zone. so it can actually help you turbo through your deck pretty good. Although its scale is 4, which is not the greatest, but fortunately, we have a lot of ways to destroy it. And I think that finally covers everything in the main deck. Oh yeah, Dragon Pit Magician. If you control another Magician card in your Pendulum Zone, you can discard a Pendulum monster to destroy a spell trap on the field. It's just more spell trap removal. It's a pretty nice level 7. Playing a lot of level 7s. There's actually a level 6 in the side deck, this Chronograph Sorcerer, that has pretty much the same effect as Astrograph Sorcerer, and the only reason I don't play it is because it's a level 6. It doesn't work with the rest of the Xyz. But if you're going for a more Pendulum-based deck, just Pendulum Beatdown, this would be really good. Everything else in here is just sort of like alternate options. You could have another Iris Magician or another Timebreaker Magician for certain matchups. Lots of things in the extra deck you could make if you wanted to focus on just Synchros or just Xyz and take out maybe your tuners or maybe take out some of your other stuff. You could make a whole lot of different things from Black Rose to Big Eye, Utopia the Lightning. Because you've got dark monsters, you can make Master Key Beetle. Another Pendulum Storm might be good in certain instances. And then, of course, Echo Oscillation. This is actually a really good card, especially if you're trying to go more of a turbo route, but I had so many things I needed to fit in that I couldn't put in here. But this is once per turn, you can target one card in your Pendulum Zone, destroy it, and then draw one card. Which, again, just perfect with Violet Poison Magician. Just pop a card they control, draw a card. And because it's continuous, you can use this every turn. You can just keep destroying the things you need, activating your Pendulumograph, searching more things while drawing. So you could actually turbo through your deck pretty quickly if you had 3 of these. So there you go, there's your deck profile for the week. Thanks again to Kieran Lowdon for requesting it. Like I said, kind of an anime-themed deck, but as far as anime-themed decks go, it's pretty powerful. And hopefully if you just want to make Pendulum Magicians or you just want to make Zark Turbo, you can get enough of an idea from watching this to know how to do it on your own. You can modify this pretty easily. Next week, I'll be doing another Patreon request for another Pendulum archetype. This time, it'll be Zephyr's. Until then, good luck and have fun.